Former Boston College quarterback Matt Ryan is finally out of Atlanta, being traded to the Indianapolis Colts. We're going to talk about why this is a great move for his career and why the Falcons never really did him many favors over the last few years. All of this and more on today's Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College, AJ Black. I am also the editor and publisher of BC Bulletin, part of the Sports Illustrated network of sites. This episode of Locked On Boston College is brought to you by Stat Hero. Stat Hero is reshaping the way you play fantasy sports. Dozens of house-based games to play daily. No sharks, no funky props, just your skill versus the lineups you choose. Sign up today at stathero.com/lockedon. Now, this isn't just one of the biggest Boston College pieces of news of the day. This is one of the biggest news pieces in sports today, as the Atlanta Falcons traded veteran quarterback Matt Ryan to the Indianapolis Colts for a third-round draft pick. Now, if you had listened to our podcast on Monday, Mitch Wolf, our Mondays with Mitch guest host, said this was probably the team that he'd end up with, and it made a lot of sense. The Colts had gotten rid of Carson Wentz, their quarterback, to the Washington Commanders, which is still weird for me to say, but that's the new team. And they had a big need for a team that had a ton of talent around them. And we'll get into why this is a great move for Ryan in just a second. But I want to talk about Matt Ryan and his time in Atlanta. Now, Matt Ryan threw for almost 60,000 yards in 14 years during his time with the Falcons. He won the MVP. He got the Falcons to the Super Bowl, who lost to the Patriots, and I don't think any Atlanta fan wants to talk about that at any point during this, but we'll bring it up. And he has been the role model of consistency in the NFL. Now, you could talk about the elite quarterbacks, the Aaron Rodgers, the Tom Brady's, Peyton Manning's, those guys during that time. But right below them, there's the Matt Ryans. And Matt Ryan, he belongs in that same class as, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, even Eli Manning a little bit. They each have their own strengths and weaknesses, but, they're not the elite, but they're still very, very good. And there's a lot to say that Matt Ryan is a future Hall of Famer. I would argue that he would, especially since I've heard all this talk about Rivers being one. If he's going to be one, Matt Ryan definitely should be it. But his time in Atlanta has clearly run its course. And it's not on him. It's the team itself, is not very good. They have been near the bottom of the South for years now. He has no talent left on that team. He's got Kyle Pitts and, a few guys here and there, but they don't have any good wide receivers. Julio Jones just left a couple years ago. Calvin Ridley, who we're not going to get into what happened to Calvin Ridley, but he's gone for another year. And so he, and in the offensive line, that offensive line for years was atrocious. And I'm not going to say they're still good. They're any much better, but they got this guy from Boston College, this guy named Chris Lindstrom, who did a nice job last year and allowed 0 sacks. That being said, offensive line for years has been a big time issue for the Falcons, and Matt Ryan was getting killed out there. And no guy killed him more than Cam Jordan, who made a, hey, where are you going at, Matt? Kind of joke on Twitter earlier today. But so Matt, it made sense, like for every party involved. For the Falcons, it's time to move on. You have a good quarterback, and he's good enough that you're never going to bottom out. And if you want to get some of those like elite recruits to prospects to kind of get your team to that next level, then you got to get rid of Matt Ryan. And that contract was prohibitive from them doing anything. That was the other reason why this trade happened, was because Matt Ryan is making insane amount of money. And Atlanta, who's trying to rebuild, needs that money to go other places. And so they found a team that will take it. You take whatever you can get. A third-round draft pick, it seems like the steal of the century because it is. But you also get rid of that contract, and that contract was big time. Now they can look at, the Falcons can look at Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Malik Willis, whatever quarterback. I think that I've heard them linked to Pickett, but they'll have their chance to get that future quarterback this year, and that'll be a big move for the Falcons. So that is a good move for them. Now for Matt Ryan, This move is even better. It gets him out of Atlanta, which, it was just getting stale there, right? He wasn't getting anywhere. He had been getting hit all the time with that bad offensive line. He had no weapons left. He gets to go from the jalopy to the penthouse. Now, the Colts, they haven't won anything big yet, but this team is in good shape, and they just needed a good quarterback, and he's a mile better than Carson Wentz. So he gets to go there. He has arguably one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the country. He could be the best at some point, but Jonathan Taylor, who's incredible. He finally gets to sit back in luxury as he actually has an offensive line that won't get him killed. And so that's also a positive. He has some good receivers. You never know if T.Y. Hilton can have a resurgence, but Michael Pittman is an excellent wide receiver. And that might be a position they go after in the draft. There's some really good wide receivers out there. You add another one on with those 2, and you all of a sudden have 3 good wide receivers. It would make a lot of sense to do that. And then you have a great defense. The Colts had a very, very good defense under Frank Reich, so they're starting to get their stuff together. Now, the only challenge for Ryan heading into this team is that right now in the NFL, there is the one conference that looks very strong and one's the other. And the NFC is very weak right now, it seems. Like Russell Wilson traded his colors to Denver. You have a lot of really good teams. You have the Chiefs, you have the Bills, you have the Broncos are starting to look like they could be someone to watch for. The Browns added Deshaun Watson. And whatever you want to say about that, but they look like they're better. Who knows where Baker Mayfield may end up? And then the Chargers. The Chargers reloaded on defense to go along with Justin Herbert. So the AFC could be a really tough out, but the Colts look like they're ready to do it. So, this is a good move, and it's going to be tough. It's going to not be tough. It's going to be weird seeing Matt Ryan not in the Atlanta Falcons uniform, but this is the best thing for him. He gets to get out of a bad situation with a team that wasn't going to go anywhere while he was still there, and gets to go to a team that looks like they're going to be competing in the playoffs, and we'll get to see what Ryan can do when he has that talent around him. Because for years now, it's been Matt Ryan trying to save the Falcons, and he didn't have much support around him. He's not going to have that issue anymore. So this is a great move for Matt Ryan. This is a good move for the Falcons. It's good for everyone involved. And, as a Pats fan, I'm not looking forward to seeing Matt Ryan play against the Patriots every year or so. So that'll be a different story. But in a moment, I want to talk a little bit about some basketball news, as there were a player and a coach that are heading their way out of Chestnut Hill. I'll explain why. Neither of them really mean that much, but it's still a bummer to see them leave. Did anyone out there take Kentucky and Baylor, and now your bracket's busted? Yeah, mine's not looking too good either, but I still got some cash from my Stat Hero Pick'em. If you haven't checked out this new platform, you're really going to miss out. You're really missing out because it is amazing. The Stat Hero single game Pick'ems pits the star players against each other in an amazing hybrid between fantasy and sports gambling. Take control back from those handicappers that always seem to have the advantage. Start focusing on the players you know best with a gameplay that doesn't rely on big spreads, long odds, or funky props. Stat Hero gives you the advantage because resulting in their gamers winning 4 times more often. Why? Because Stat Hero eliminates the mystery about who or what you are going up against. In addition to their pick'em games, they also have dozens of lineups you can comb through to take on head-to-head. They simply just post the sets of players for you to take on with the set of players you choose. Stat Hero is the easiest and fastest way to get your sports action fix. The simple, sleek gameplay will have you playing in minutes. This is what daily fantasy was all about. So head on over to stathero.com/lockedon and use promo code LOCKEDON for 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/lockedon and use promo code LOCKEDON for 100% match. stathero.com/lockedon, promo code LOCKEDON. Terms and conditions do apply. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. Thank you all for listening. And if you have not done so already, we are available wherever you get your podcast. Just hit that subscribe button. Tell a friend about us. Find us on YouTube at Locked On Boston College and just listen to us. If you're enjoying this, my goal with this podcast is to make Boston College sports interesting every single day. Like, you can get Boston College news here or there. You can read get a nice personal interest story in the Globe. I'm giving you what my analysis, my thoughts about these games, my thoughts about these players and where these programs are going. And hopefully you can agree with me. You can disagree with me. I don't care. Some of the stuff I say, I know I got someone who said, AJ, I heard you say this about Jeff Hafley and the quarterbacks. I don't think you're right. I'm glad you're listening, right? So thank you all who have made Locked On Boston College your first listen every morning. And if you haven't done so already, make it your first listen too. Whether it's when you're walking the dog, you're doing dishes in the morning, if you're like my wife and listen to podcasts to go to sleep. I don't think my voice is going to help you go to sleep. At least I hope not. But listen to Locked On Boston College, and I hope you enjoy it. We're going to have a lot of good stuff this summer. Make sure to check it out. We're doing it 5 days a week. So on yesterday's show, I had news break while I was recording, and I already had my whole docket filled with stuff to talk about, so I didn't get a chance to really bring it up. But it actually kind of dovetailed nicely into today, where Chris Markwood, the former Boston College assistant coach, well, he was the assistant coach until 24 hours ago, is now the head coach of the Maine Black Bears. Maine fired their head coach, Richard Barron, who was really struggling with the Black Bears. They were 21-75 over 4 years. So he earned his way out. He quit basically in the middle of the season, or resigned, not quit. And Markwood is now set to take over. Now, Chris Markwood, he is from Portland. He played for the Maine Black Bears. He's got a lot of history in the American East, so he is the perfect fit for this job. And is this a big loss for Boston College basketball? No, because I think you look at the three assistants. You have three assistants under Earl Grant that he hired last year: Anthony Goins, you have Chris Markwood, and then Jim Molinari. Now, Jim Molinari is he's basically kind of like your Scott Spinelli, like the leader on that bench. He's the defensive guru. He's the big one. He's the big fish on your coaching staff. He has a ton of experience. He's been around big programs like Oklahoma, things like that. Anthony Goins is right behind him. Anthony Goins is a young and up-and-coming coach who is with Clemson. He ended up joining with Earl Grant at Boston College. I think he's a good recruiter. Chris Markwood, I'm not knocking, and this is not to knock him. I'm just saying he's replaceable. And, it's not a huge loss, because it's not like in football where if you lost like Azar Abdul over him, you'd be like, oh my gosh, what's going to go on now? Markwood, you could find other guys to do what he did. Markwood had a good pedigree for what you wanted to do at this program. He coached at Northeastern. He coached at Vermont. He knew the Northeast area really well. And from the from the conversations I've had, I've heard he was really good with like AAU coaches, and he would be able to kind of help Boston College get those inroads back in locally. But so did Anthony Goins. Anthony Goins is a local guy too, so it's not like you're losing your main connection to those schools. So Markwood's gone, and now Earl Grant, in his first year, will do what Jeff Hafley didn't have to do his first year, which is find a new assistant. And so this will be something worth watching. You can probably guess some names, but it's really tough to kind of figure out where they went. I mean, Jim Molinari came completely out of left field. There was that George Mason coach last year that I had heard was going to probably be the next assistant there. He ended up somewhere else. It's a crapshoot with assistants sometimes, and I think that's where it's going to be here. But Markwood, I wish him luck. I have to laugh because when I wrote my article on him on bcbulletin.com, this is just a weird side tangent here. I have my picture database of stuff that I'm legally allowed to use to put up for pictures. And I was like, he's a backup coach. I'm never going to, he's an assistant. I'm never going to find any pictures. I put him in, and what do I find? There's a picture of him holding a board that just says naked. And I know it's a defensive thing, but it's just like, you could play like, enter a caption to this picture because it's just so random. Anyways, I'm getting off on a side tangent here. So Markwood, he's gone. He's going to be going someplace else. We'll have to keep an eye out where BC goes next and see what happens, because they're going to want to get that coach in to fill that spot. Now, it wasn't just a coach that left Boston College on Monday. Boston College also lost a player off of their roster too, and it's one that I think most people wouldn't say it would surprise you, but he wasn't higher on the list of people who could enter the transfer portal. Kanye Jones, a true freshman, entered the transfer portal according to verbal commits. He did that on Monday. I've seen him retweeting it all, so I'm guessing it's true. And so Kanye Jones, again, this is not a huge loss for Boston College. And again, this I just like with Markwood, this is not saying this is a knock on him. I'm saying that, maybe going someplace else will be a better fit for Jones, because you watch players in any sport and you can see, where their strengths and where their weaknesses are, right? You watch in basketball, right? And you see that, James Carnick was stronger around the rim, but he couldn't really shoot far outside. You could see that Mekhi Ashton Langford was not a very good outside shooter, but could really drive the hole well. Right now you could see, like Jaden Zachary, he's good on defense. I could not, watching Jones, I just couldn't see what his strength he brought to this team was. He just looked like a warm body out there at points. Like, he averaged about 1.8 points per game. He had less than a rebound per game. He didn't look all that strong on defense. He looked like a really, really raw freshman. And that's kind of what he was. I mean, you look at his recruiting profile, and Earl Grant brought 3 guys in. He brought in Devin McLaughlin, who we never saw, and I don't know what his deal is. Jaden Zachary and Kanye Jones. All these guys really late in the process, and guys that he had connected with at College of Charlestown, right? I think all 3 of them were. Well, Kanye Jones, his offer list was like, it's not even like the good mid-majors. It was like College of Charleston, Cleveland State, Drake, Buffalo. So like really kind of like really middling teams. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, if you're going to compete in the ACC every week, you'd want a stronger offer sheet than that. So, Jones, he started off really well with BC. He had 12 points in that opening game against Dartmouth. But after that, it all kind of just slid. And then by the end of the season, I wrote it on BC Bulletin, he only had 4 times in the last 13 games that he played more than 10 minutes. And I ask you to think, what was the highlight of that time? I mean, he was just kind of there. And so maybe this change will be good for everyone. Boston College will get a scholarship back, which they could use to hit the transfer portal, because there's about 1 million guys already in there, or figure out if that's what Mekhi Ashton Langford's going to fill if he comes back for one more year. And then Kanye Jones may be able to find a program that's more fits his style. So it's not a knock on Jones. This is one of my goals in doing this podcast is not to rip the athletes. I'll tell you if there's a part of the game that I feel is weak, but he just didn't seem like he meshed with that team. And so this is not a bad move at all. And hopefully it works out for all parties that are involved. And I'm going to go on record right now and say this isn't the last one. There's definitely going to be probably at least 1 more or 2 more players that'll probably enter the portal, and then Grant will have some wiggle room on that transfer portal. We'll have that all covered here at Locked On Boston College and on bcbulletin.com. In a moment, we'll talk about BC women's taking care of business against Quinnipiac. You're going to want to hear my thoughts about that game and more. But first of all, it's that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season, and it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Head on over to BetOnline, where the game starts. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. Thank you all for listening, and happy Tuesday, Tuesday, everyone. God, I'm getting ahead of myself here. But there was a big game on Monday at Boston College as BC easily defeated Quinnipiac. And as I speak, they're up by 21 points. I have to record this a little bit before the game is over, but I was going to wait to the very, very end, but I'm like, oh, they're smoking them. So they're up 21 points right now. And, the story of the game, and it was the game that you'd been waiting for, has been Taylor Soule. Taylor Soule had 30. They just took her out with 33 points and 16 rebounds. Just an absolutely dominant performance from Soule. Now, BC, they came out roaring in this game, really taking control of this game early with a 20-9 first quarter. And it was funny that, they showed it on BC women's basketball's Twitter. BC hit 2 buzzer beaters in the first 2 quarters. They weren't like long buzzer beaters, but they were 2 deep threes, and that kind of really does kind of set the tone for the Eagles. So you had Soule with 20, Schwartz with 20, Soule with 33, and Garrod with 13. BC was shooting incredibly well from the field, shooting 51% overall, but 42% from three-point range. That's going to win you a lot of games. And credit to Quinnipiac as well. They beat URI, and they're a good team. They had 21 wins. They did not go away. BC, it looked like this game was going to go away, get out of hand really quickly, and they only were outscored by BC in quarters 2 and 3 by 3 points total. And then BC kind of pulled away in the fourth quarter, to take control of the game. So this really was, it really was that first quarter, they just took care of business, and that was it. And so after this, Boston College will go on to play Columbia at home. And that game, I believe, it's round 3. They haven't announced the times yet. It's between the 23rd, which is Wednesday, and the 26th, which is on Saturday. So it'll be in between there. Now, Columbia has 2 wins. They beat Holy Cross and Old Dominion. BC, when you look at who BC is playing against, it's Ivy League, it's an MAAC, it's, the America East. These are not like Power 5 teams, and it's not even like the really good mid-majors. But hey, any weirder things can happen. So they get to face Columbia, and then they're going to probably play the winner of Seton Hall, VCU or Drexel, if they can get past Columbia. But, it's home court advantage, I think, until the end. So BC can continue playing at alumni at Conti Forum. So congratulations to them. This is fun. It's always nice to see them take a nice, long postseason run here. And that's exactly what they're doing. They beat Maine by 25. They're beating Quinnipiac by 23 with about a minute left. This is just an all-around great performance for BC. They're showing why they're the number 1 seed in the NIT. So congratulations to the women here, and it's always fun to end the season on a strong note. Just one last little coaching news. On yesterday's episode, I talked about potential coaches getting sniped from other schools, and one of the things I brought up was Earl Grant possibly getting hired by South Carolina. I know I had been told, and I said this a couple times, by a reliable source that he'd been kind of vetted out by South Carolina, but he did not end up being their head coach. They did end up hiring Paris Ford from Chattanooga, and based off of what Message Board Genius Message Board Genius Twitter account says, if you ever follow them, they're great. They just post parody, not parody, but real message board comments from different sites that come across almost like parody. The South Carolina fans are not happy about that hire. I don't think they'd have been happy if they hired Grant, but that's one you can take off your board. So this is AJ Black. On tomorrow's episode, it is Recruiting Wrap-Up Wednesday. I have so much to talk about. It's going to be more than one segment on this one, so hopefully you're really into our recruiting talk. It's one of our most sought-after segments, so if you have any recruiting news that you want me to bring up, please just hit me up on Twitter at AJBlack_BC or at LockedOnBC. Again, this is AJ. Thank you all. We'll see you all again tomorrow. Have a great day. Stay strong, everyone.